And of course, this now opens the door to our first interview segment on the show. And it gives me great pleasure because I can't actually hide my excitement. It's World Television Day today, being November 21st, 2023. From 1996, the United Nations declared this day for the globe, that is the world generally, to celebrate that box. It has become part and parcel of most families around the world, the television. But what is this all about? And this is not actually, the topic is not what is exciting me, but the guest that we have been able to pull and drag to have in the studio this morning. Our own very dashing head of programs, Momoh.
I mean, who better to
talk about broadcasting generally than this man right here?
I don't even know how to respond to that. I'm like, this hype.
Good morning. No, honestly, you know, when you meet people who know their onions in what they do, it excites you to have a conversation with them, and that's what I'm feeling this morning. I really feel
so very much.
I feel very pleased to have you on the set this morning.
I'm just happy we can drag you in here.
Thank you for the kind words. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. It's a great pleasure being here. I'm elated and excited to be here.
All right. It's World Television Day today. What is it about this box, before we go into the nitty-gritty of it? What is it about this box that makes it so important in the lives of virtually everyone around the world? Whether you have TV or not, you want to know, you want to be associated with someone who has a TV in their house. So first of all, let's start from there. What is it about this box? What's the magic of this box that makes it so ubiquitous?
Yes, ubiquitous. That's the right word.
Yes.
Television, you know. But this morning I was wondering whether it is still a box. You know, you said, what is it about this box? And this morning I was wondering whether the television set is still a box. You know. I know you talked about the television being a box, a magical box, especially if you belong to the Gen
Zs.
No, not the Gen Z.
The millennial?
That's the X.
The X.
Yes.
Right.
The X. You know, yeah, you must have seen the television of those days. You know, the one that is in a wooden box.
Yes.
You know, so from the way you speak, I know which generation you are. When you now say, what is it about this box? It's no longer a box. The television has evolved over time, you understand, from a mechanical television to the electronic television, you know, and up to the present form that it has taken. Today it has taken the form of a screen. You understand? We talk about the smart TVs. So we move through mechanical television, electronic television. Under electronic, we have the LED, LED emitting diodes. You know, we have different other kinds of electronic televisions that came up. You remember the Hunchback?
Yes.
The cathode ray. That's the cathode ray television, cathode ray tube. There, you know. And today we are talking about the smart TVs. And if you look at the TV, it has mutated. It is no longer a box. It has taken the form of a computer monitor.
Yes.
So it has mutated into a television, a computer monitor. So you can no longer separate the television from the computer. And because the computer is, when we talk about adaptation of technology, one of those things that has been adapted worldwide is the computer. And you realize that because the television has taken the form of a computer, it's here to stay forever.
Wow.
Yes.
So, but just hold on. Now, we've seen the journey from when it was mechanical to digital to now smart TV, as you've rightly put it. My question still remains: what is it about this thing we call television that people just want to have? They want to own it. What is it about it? It's still the question I want answers to.
It's because there's so many reasons, you know, why the television has, like we use the right word, ubiquitous.
Yes.
And it's a magical box, you know, if I'm to use the word box. And part of the reason is because it is the window to the outside world. So you're like locked up in a room.
Yeah.
And there's no way for you to see the outside world. So you know how important a window is in your house.
True.
That's how the television is. But this time it is a window to the outside world. Today we talk about the global stage because of digitization. We talk about global television platforms where you have both local and international television stations operating under the same remote control. So you see the outside world. For a child growing up, for example, it is his first window to the outside world. A child watching cartoon, a preschool child. How does he get to know about a parachute, a plane, and so many other things? Is because he can see Tom and Jerry dropping from something that looks like a parachute. So for early learners, for preschool kids, the entire education can be gotten from the television. And because of the various content that is available on television, whoever you are, there is just something for you. So it is a magical box. Okay. In 1947, one of the Oscar winners said that sooner or later, people were going to get tired of staring at the wooden box. You know the wooden box TV?
Yeah,
I still have one. Yes, I still have one that I inherited. So he says sooner or later, people are going to get tired of staring at the wooden box, when it came out. But you see, their wooden box has evolved over time and has refused to die. The reason why today is celebrated, part of the reason why today is celebrated as World Television Day, is to also look at how television has evolved in spite of other media platforms. Today we talk about the internet TV and several other, streaming platforms that are available. Yet the television as a device has survived. You understand? So it's just a magical box. You never get tired, of staring at the magical box, like a Pandora box. You're not sure what's on next.
Exactly.
So you're glued to it. It's exciting, and it has a lot of effect on the society.
Well, of course, I like that way you have taken the conversation. We can't talk about this box without talking about the content. I mean, we have established that it has evolved over the years with rise in streaming platforms and all of that. But has it affected the traditional content and the preferences? I mean, when you talk about television, you talk about the many preferences. There was such a time where we were, subjected to just watch certain. We didn't have as many options. But looking at Nigeria, have we first of all met up with that need for diverse content? And are we there yet?
These questions are many, actually. In the monopoly television model, which was what we had when we had the NTA, and then the state stations. You understand? Nigeria had the first television station in Africa, the Western, I think WTV or so.
Yes.
So
Western Nigeria television.
WNTV. Yes, or WNTV. When we had that, and eventually, the states started having their own television stations because it became like a competition, and then later on, the Nigerian television, not authority then, I think it was NTV or so, and then eventually a lot of the stations from the states, were also seeded back into NTA, you understand, for federal government to take control of and all of that. When we had all of that, we were operating what is called the monopoly television model. In the monopoly television model, the most important part of the value chain, which is the consumer, is not really considered because you just sit down and you wait for whatever you are dished. You understand? Whatever you are given, it's okay. So I remember in those days, and I need to take you. So I need to remind a lot of the young people who are watching. In those days, we only had as kids, we only had about 1 or 90 minutes of
TV time.
TV time. It comes up maybe for 4 p.m. And then we'll start with our, after the program parade, we watch, the first will be color bar. After the color bar, we'll now start the program parade. After the program parade, we'll go into the children's show. Mostly Sesame Street, Atom Ant, and all of those other shows. Later on, when we started having local content, we had our own Tales by Moonlight. We had only 90 minutes of children's airtime, children content, as against today, that there are several channels dedicated only to children. You understand? So, these were the monopoly television era. Today, we are no longer in the monopoly television era. We have gradually moved from that monopoly television era to this multi-channel platform, where the consumer is the king. He has his remote control, and he can watch over 100, 200 channels at a go. You understand? And that is competing with other media platforms, you know, like streaming sites and all of those. So yes, we are not yet there as Nigerians. And because of these long years of the monopoly television model, a lot of the practitioners that we have are still
in that,
a product of the monopoly television model, where they do not know how important
the consumer
is in the scheme of things. So we still have that challenge, you know, especially in government-owned stations, who still operate with the mentality of the monopoly model. So whatever we dish you, you watch. We don't care whether you're watching or you're not watching. That's your business.
There's so much competition.
Yes, whether you're watching, you know. So, but part of the gains of digitization is bringing all of these players to a digital platform where the terrestrial signals will be switched off. All right? The analog terrestrial signals, will be switched off. We're going to have digital terrestrial transmission, the DTT. And when that happens, it means that everybody who is, television is going to be broken down into content generation, transmission, and distribution. Yes. So when that happens, it means that you have no choice but to compete, because you cannot be on a platform and nobody's watching you. And these digital devices, they come with audience measurement functionalities. So it is not what we are doing now. You send out questionnaire and ask what is your favorite station. But with those technology that has been adopted around the world, and as Nigeria is still crawling behind, with those technologies, you can easily see the analytics of the content viewership, of a channel and all of those. So yes, we are not yet there. Part of our biggest challenge as a people is that implementation. You know, we have fantastic ideas everywhere in Nigeria. You need to see the fantastic ideas. And I see people clap when they hear ideas. I am no longer, excited about ideas, because I don't think we are short of ideas in this country. Our biggest challenge had always been implementation. Wait until you see the implementation. That's when you should clap.
Wait till you see the implementation. Now, for television, I still go back to that box, because for me, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter whether it's now a screen, but I still look at television as that very box. Yes. I know even up till now, it's still like a status statement that you enter into somebody's living room, and of course, you want to see TV somewhere. Yes. And so those who don't have it struggle to have whatever type of
like it will be. Like we all gather through the window
to watch TV and all of that. Now I want to ask, because family is very crucial. Yeah. How has the evolution of television as we know it impacted on family life, both in rural, the urban, semi-urban, and even in the cities, and even on the kind of life that we live presently? Where is the position of television as we know it, both at the box and even the content? What has been its impact on the family over the years?
Wow, multifaceted, actually. Research carried out across Nigeria, especially within campus communities and several other communities, Lagos, Akwa Ibom, have all shown that there is this, what is called cultural imperialism, cultural imperialism or media imperialism, as some people might call it. A lot of our young people have adopted foreign culture simply because of what they watch on television.
Globalization.
Globalization has affected the imperialism, culturally, dominance of foreign culture upon local cultures. That is one of the effects of television. You see young people sagging, and they've never traveled out of this country. Yeah. They just saw it on television, and they've imbibed that culture. They have adopted it, and all other kinds of vices that you find, going on. And that debate has been on for a very long time, especially for less industrialized countries who feel that American culture is dominating the entire world. There has been a discussion on local content quota. Yeah. And on why certain local content should be regulated. One of the sponsors of liberalization for the media is America. Because they feel that they have enough content to go around the whole world, and insisting on quota, local content quota, will kind of, affect their market and all that. They want to take the global market. I think they work out of one of those summits, global summits, trying to discuss local content regulations and local content quota and all of those. But a lot of countries have local content quota. Australia has, Canada has,
I know
and
India.
Nigeria too has a local content quota. Our local content quota for now is between 70 to 100% local content as for local stations, based on the 2016 NBC Act as amended.
Right.
You understand? I'll tell you a parable of a stranger, briefly. Now, there's this family that, taught, a family, a nuclear family, taught their kids about values, about morality, about purity, about honesty, about truth, about doing what is right. You understand? Don't forget all kinds of negative vices. Don't go into any kind of negative vices. Don't engage in drug abuse, alcohol abuse, and all of that. And the family was doing very well. The kids and all of those that were members of that family, until one day a stranger came and knocked on their door, and the stranger came into the house, and they welcomed the stranger. The stranger was a fantastic storyteller, so he would sit in the evening and begin to tell stories, and everyone would gather around, fascinated by the stories being told by this stranger. And but there's a problem with this stranger. This stranger, while he's telling the stories, he will bring out the cigarette, light it up, and smoke in the presence of the children. Now remember, the parents have taught these kids, don't smoke. It's not good for you to smoke. This same stranger will bring out alcohol and be drinking his alcohol while he's telling the story. And the parents could not do anything. This same stranger, they accepted into their house, will bring in strange women into their house. And was promoting nudity and all kinds of
vices,
other things,
right.
that we couldn't even say on air. Now, eventually, these kids began to copy the behavior of this stranger.
Of course.
Now, all of the values taught these kids was lost because of this stranger that was welcomed into that house. Now, this parable of the stranger tells you that stranger is a television. It's one stranger that walks into your house and can destroy your family totally. And that is why you see that every television, there are ratings.
Regulations, right.
There are ratings. For the global television, there is a parental control on the screen. So UK has a question. How has it affected family life generally? There's a good, there's a bad, there's a ugly.
Of course.
But like UNESCO will always say, all of these things can be helped with media literacy. Our media literacy is very, very low. The last UNESCO summit here in Abuja at the Transcorp last year, it was a literacy week, and it was 1 week of literacy talks. And it was all centered on media literacy. There is a big gap. I don't want to use the word media illiterate. A lot of us are media illiterate. So you go to a home and kids are watching channels that you can see from that channel that they're not. So you are seeing SNLV, sex, nudity, language violence. And you see kids watching. You can see 16 and you see a 10-year-old watching. So there's a need for a lot of education for people to understand. That's why I gave this parable of the stranger. Your entire work can be destroyed because children have impressionable minds, right? And they become what is absorbed into their minds. In mass communication, we have a theory called the cultivation theory. And that theory talks about how the television can cultivate you. Character, behavior, attitude, and everything in your life based on the television. So it cultivates you. And when the experiment was carried out in the US, it was discovered that children that watch violent programs on television end up acting in that way. Or see the world, when you watch a lot of bad news on television, especially like news, you now begin to fear the world. And there's this mean world syndrome that people were diagnosed with. These are people that watch negative news.
Exactly.
All the time.
Negative news is now news.
Yes.
So they now suffer from what is called the mean world syndrome. So the television is everything. it shapes your life. It determines what you become, because you are what you see. Whatever you behold, you begin to become, you evolve into the image of what you watch and what you see. So this is how powerful the television is. That box has made a lot of lives. You know, people like myself, you know, everything I learned about the media, I learned it on television, just watching. I remember my first audition, I got 75%, and I've never been trained. Just sitting, watching the TV.
You have been trained by that stranger. You have been trained by the stranger.
I was trained by the stranger. Yes. So that's the good part of it. But then there are also the negative things that we also learn from the TV. You understand? So
I wanted you to actually emphasize that aspect too, because as much as, of course, TV has its negative influences, you, for example, are a product of the good influence of TV, not having been taught by anyone, but
even
you
the
are
little
able
Spanish,
to
understand.
Exactly.
So it is a window to the world. It's amazing what you can get from the television. It's so amazing. It's you know, you can have kids who could learn so much just sitting at home. A child on Pampers, but yet knows so much because of the television. You understand? So it's a very, very powerful tool.
Very powerful tool. Because
It is.
I asked that question deliberately because sometimes when my kids say certain things, I'm taken aback. I
use some words.
Yes.
You can't, even at your age, you have to like...
I used to ask myself, boy, you go school at all? You know, when they say certain things that are so smart, and when you ask, they will tell you where the source. It's from the cartoons
especially
you watch on
dramatic
TV.
expression,
yes,
and some grammatical.
Yes,
they will say it, and you're like, where did you get that from?
My 3-year-old daughter she turned off the chandelier light around the dining side just yesterday, and she turned it off, and I was just she was looking at me because I was looking at her. She knew I was going to ask why. Don't worry, I turned it on. I turned it on earlier to see what I was doing. Now I'm done. I don't need it anymore.
So where did that come from? Was someone speaking through you?
I had to ask my wife. This thing, I should show you.
Yeah. I remember my daughter too. The teacher came home and told me one day, "Sir, you should stop her from watching TV." I said, "Why?" Because she will correct the teacher.
Yes.
Exactly.
Correct the pronunciation of the teacher and all that, and it was from TV.
Yeah.
Just from listening, you know, these are, you know, watching cartoons from, you know, from the US, for example.
Yes.
You learn to pronounce certain words
in certain ways. Yes.
You know, who are not, you know, who do not have English language is not our first language. You know, so you find out that these kids can learn a lot from watching television. So, like I said, there's a good, there's a bad, and there's an ugly. But that is where parents come in. You cannot afford, as parents, to allow the television to train your children.
Exactly.
Especially the multi-channel global television.
Platforms, right.
They have a lot of things, which I don't want to say here. But there are so many agenda. Because like I told you, the cultivation power of television is important, is big, and is strong. And because of the cultivation power of television, if you want to get a society, if you want to get a society to accept a thing that they don't want to accept, put it in the form of a television program. Feed them with it. Come back after 5 years, they will accept it.
They won't even know that they
will not even know that they've accepted. The barriers in them will be broken. So this is a strategy used by a lot of Western countries to sell certain ideology that we as Africans have rejected. If you notice now, across Africa, Nigeria has recolonized other African countries because of Nigerian content. People now talk like Nigerians, dress like Nigerians, want to marry Nigerians because of Nigerian home videos.
I have friends from Zimbabwe who constantly confess to the influence of Nigerian home videos.
Look at Nigerian music.
They know all our stars.
Yeah, look at Nigerian music. We've globalized the entire world. We're topping charts, Billboard charts, now as an Afrobeat. And it's been ruled by Nigerians.
Exactly.
So this is how powerful the media, the television can be in terms of content, you understand? So we should guard our space as much as we can and ensure that we have this media literacy campaign going all over. The UNESCO is talking about a multi-stakeholders approach to media regulation. So we're no longer talking about traditional media regulation where we have like an NBC.
Right.
That's during the military
Nigeria Press
and
Council.
dictatorship era. Today we don't talk about that anymore. In a democracy, you do not need an external body to regulate you. So we've moved from there to self-regulation, where you regulate yourself. Now from self-regulation, there's another model called the co-regulation, where you have both the external, the traditional, working with the body, like now we have BON, Broadcasters Organization of Nigeria, which is a self, which is a body of broadcasting stations. So you have co-regulation, you have traditional regulation, you have the co-regulation, the self-regulation and the co-regulation. But now we have moved to a new paradigm of regulation called the multi-stakeholders, where the UNESCO is talking about having Parents-Teachers Association as part of the regulatory body.
Yes.
Having the clergy, right? Non-governmental organizations, the broadcasters themselves, advertisers, everybody coming to form the regulatory
body.
Because whether you like it or not, we are all affected by the media. The media will continue to shape our world. You understand? Whether the old media or the new media. Today we talk about the internet television, right? And what is the future of television? If I should go there.
Because that was where I was going. With the rise of social media, I wanted to ask if it will be integrated into this future of television, because I can see a pressure at some point. People would want to have social media on TV, or rather access to it. I'm sure people are already doing that at the moment.
The media.
The TV is already on the social media.
Will now be, with the future of television, affect the traditional television as we know it?
There is no longer such thing as a traditional television.
I mean, we're talking about the 10% local quota. Would it affect it? Would there be pressure enough
to affect the local content, the local quota? Local content? No, there is already a convergence.
Yeah.
So we now have the convergence of the media. So we have the social media, we have the traditional media, all of them, the new media, the old media, all coming to converge. So every newspaper house has, a website, has a social media platform.
Exactly.
Every television has the same thing, and there's a convergence. So you're watching a television show, and there are social media handles where you can also be part of the show. So we call it the media convergence, and we've converged. So there is no such thing as anyone being a threat to the other one. But actually, the future of television is the streaming content. The Gen Zs don't want you to serve them. The Gen Zs prefer that they are in control of their lives. They want to be able to decide what to watch, from news to programming content. And if you noticed, fast television stations have moved to start their streaming sites. Because in the United States, for example, last year, cable television subscription dropped by 50%. And that is because the Gen Zs do not know, the consuming pattern of television has changed. Nobody goes home again and watch news. But, because we are from the old stock, we still watch news.
9 o'clock.
Yeah, we still watch 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock news.
Right.
But the Gen Zs no longer watch those news. If you notice,
they don't.
If you have them with you, they will not wait with you. They are watching news on the go. Because they prefer to see their news on the go. They don't have a time to watch television.
And they also want to participate in discussing the news.
Yes, they want to participate. And far more importantly, they want to decide what news to watch. Based on certain perception theories, So they want to watch what appeals to them. So the future of television is the streaming of content. Every television that wants to remain relevant in the future must have the streaming platforms and the streaming services available, so that the Gen Zs can decide which news to watch, what content to watch.
And they are the consumers of the future.
They are the consumers of the now and
the future.
We are in that generation. That generation we've heard about since we were born. The end time generation.
You talked about media literacy, and I think this point is very, very important to stress. Even way back, we're talking about the 80s, when you had media scholars. People like Walter Lippmann talked about the images in our heads, saying that the media is responsible for the opinions that we have in our heads, the images in our heads about others, particularly about those in government. Then you had someone like Noam Chomsky, who in his book Manufactured Consent talked about how even you coming out to say APC, PDP, he said you are just responding to somebody's calculation that you've been configured, so to speak, to come out to air an opinion that you think is yours, but in the grand scheme of things,
You have been inadvertently
you have been
wired.
inadvertently wired to behave in that way. And you also talked about theories, especially media effects theories are very, very important in this direction. How much, the question I want to ask is, because I want to believe that parents are watching, guardians are also watching, and kids may also be watching. This is very, very important going forward. That how much of parental guidance should be deployed, especially with respect to what we expose children to, because an adult is already an adult. It's very difficult to sit an adult down to want to deconstruct certain things in their head. But of course,
the adults
children,
are lucky. In our days, we were pure, so to speak.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, by the time I saw the first picture of, okay, let me use their language, a nude, I was already an adult, right? I was already an adult because you
won't see it. You won't
see
stumble on
it.
it.
There are magazines, right,
Yes,
for adults.
yes.
And those magazines
Very
are
difficult,
not,
difficult to see.
on the
Difficult to
stand,
see.
right? So my first nude picture, when I was already an adult, when I saw the first copy of a Playboy magazine.
Not
I was an
anymore.
adult, right? It's not the same anymore. You understand what I'm saying? And before we talk about parents, let's talk about government.
Okay.
Because, you know, one of my mentors, fella, he said, when we dey house, papa and
Government will
mama
not be teacher.
When we go school, teacher be teacher.
Be teacher.
When we go university, lecturer be teacher. When we start to dey work,
Government be teacher.
Who be government teacher? Culture and tradition.
Tradition.
So the biggest teacher is the government. And the teacher to the government is culture and tradition. You understand? We should start with government. Every time I look at Nigerian music videos, I believe that media literacy should begin with the regulators.
Okay.
Should begin with, if we have a film and video censors board, if, I don't know, I've not had the time to read that act establishing it, but it's one of the things I will do very soon. I will read that act establishing the Nigerian film and video censors board to understand whether it covers music videos.
It does, actually.
And if it does, the soft porn that is being shown on Nigerian
As
channels,
music videos.
as music videos,
Yes.
is that normal? So media literacy should begin with those people who are in authority. If I were in music and video censors board, and if that falls under my purview, you will not go on air with a soft pornography in the name of a music video. Because I've watched foreign channels in other countries. Every song has what is called the radio or the television edit.
Yes.
A music video cannot be aired on any platform, you understand, that does not conform to the standards of television, that has to preserve the minds of impressionable people, young people. The reason why the television, we call it broadcasting, both television and radio, is because there are kids watching. And no matter what you want to do, you can go into your club and do all of those, but you cannot put it on the airwaves, right? On the new media, well, it could be accepted. That's why they ask you if you are 18 plus.
Yes.
So you afford it and you can do it because it's democratic media. Yeah, right? You have certain rights. But as someone that works on television and on radio, I have a responsibility to preserve the minds of these young people. So I sit down in my house and I watch all this pornography going on.
In the name of music video.
In the name of music video. And there's a regulation somewhere. On this station, I've trained most of the young people who produce content to identify those things and never use it. Even when we have to use some of these music videos, the treatment on ASU is different.
True.
I saw a music video recently and one of my boys came. I didn't know what was inside. My boys came. The video looked so clean. But the guy was in a marijuana farm. And one of my boys said, "Oga, this thing is Igbo. Don't air that video." Don't air that video. And it looks as if he's in the garden. So there are a lot of things in these videos. There are coded messages in these videos. In my house, my children don't watch all those things that promote evil and all of those. So during your Halloween, my children will themselves, they'll switch off the cartoon channels. Because Halloween just ended. And most of the themes about, you know, demonic and all of those activities. I know? And then I also teach them not to watch most of these cartoons. You see witches flying, telling you that it's cool to be a witch. And I was telling that to, I've trained my kids right from childhood. They don't watch those kind of content. They don't need it in their minds. Because I understand what happens to your subconsciousness. Everything that you go through in life comes into your subconsciousness, you absorb it, and it begins to dictate what happens to you throughout your life.
Images in our heads.
Those images remain permanently glued in your head. And by the time you reach the age of 12, it becomes too late. At the age of 12, to remove any image on your mind, you need what is called affirmation and continuous repetition. To remove an image that you have formed in your mind between the age of 0 and 12. The mind opens and closes from 0 to 7. 0 to 7, the child has already become what that child is going to become. That's what psychologists say, and there are a lot of books on that you can read. Psychologists tell you from 0 to 7, 8, the mind has closed. It's like a hard disk. Every of those images the child has watched has entered that hard disk and is closed. You know, when your hard disk is filled, nothing else can enter. It will show you red. Depends on whether the child has absorbed positivity or negativity in the name of all of those images that you have shown that child. From the power of the witches and the Nigerian movies with Babalawos doing wonders and all of those, the child has absorbed them. And today, you know, we're in a country where they're telling you, get rich. It's better to get rich than to die poor, and you can do anything to get rich. All of this content this child has absorbed, and he's 7, he's 8. The thing peaks from 8 to 12. At 12, the mind is sealed. That child needs God. At 12, that child needs God. If you're exposed to pornography, you're wondering why you have young men today who could participate in rape and all of those. Check your music videos. You're talking about the what is it called? The presentation of women as sex objects. Check your music videos.
That's true.
All of these mind images, like UK has said, that is planted in the mind of the young child. That he grows, that he sees women as a thing. He has no respect, no regards, you know, and all of those things happen from all of these things that you call entertainment.
Exactly.
That is why it is a huge responsibility on parents to make sure that between these ages of 0 to 12, that you safeguard the minds of the child. When the child gets to that age, from 12 upward, whatever comes in late. Because the hard disk is filled up.
It's filled up.
Exactly.
For you to not displace those initial programming, it becomes difficult. But imagine a child that grew up with all of this junk. That child is doomed. These are people that you see in their later age, they begin to go for all kinds of prayers and begin to say all kinds of affirmation, and their life keeps gravitating towards a particular direction. Why? Because the part of your mind that controls you is your subconsciousness. It's not your consciousness. There's a part of your mind that has absorbed so much, and that part does not sleep. That's the part of your mind that when you sleep, you begin to dream. And you see a cow chasing you.
Okay, Mr. Momoh, let's go back to the television and the many opportunities in this evolving landscape in television. I mean, for marketers and all of that, is it going to get better with what you have seen in the television space?
It's definitely going to get better. We have the digitization that has happened across the world. We're not getting it right in Nigeria. We did a lot of mistakes. In the first place, we adopted set-top boxes when this thing started. And what is the idea of set-top boxes? I don't know. I keep digressing from your question. What was the idea of the set-top boxes? We said because we are poor, we should get set-top boxes, because for you to have digital signal, it means that you must have digital transmitters. And if you have a digital transmitter, you cannot receive signal except you have a digital receiver, which means all of our television sets in Nigeria will be discarded. So instead, we decided to adopt having set-top boxes because we're Africans. And so that in itself is a mistake, because it simply means that we're not looking at the future. We're looking at how we will get there and then begin to think of another future.
Right.
If we've adopted it from day one, it means that all of these big stations will be forced to import digital signals. And as digital signals are running, because we have what is called parallel switch over, you run both analog and digital. As both of them were running, people will begin to buy digital television sets, those who can afford it, and then gradually we will phase it out. So we opted for the set-top boxes, and companies were given licenses to manufacture set-top boxes, And then we started switching over, you know, analog to digital. We switched over JOS. We went back to JOS, where the first color TV started.
Yes.
And then we switched over like that, switch over Abuja and all of that. Today, we have not succeeded in switching Nigeria from analog to digital at all. And we don't know when that will happen, because it has got a lot of money, it has caused a lot of controversy in this country, and yet we are nowhere to be found. However, because of the opportunities that digitization offers, it means that where you have one television channel, you could have up to 80, 100 or more. Talking about that bandwidth, it simply means that there's a need for more content. So there's a need for more content to fill up these spaces, and it is a major, major challenge. And we do not have what it takes to churn out those content, because the content must conform to digital formats, you know. So we need more content creators, we need more infrastructure, and we need a lot of facility to support, you know, that. You know, so today we have a lot of content producers on social media and all of those. But like I said, these are not content you can bring to television. You know, where once you have a receiver, you can have it. You understand? So there's a great opportunity. In terms of marketing, there's a great opportunity for marketing as well. Today, you know that the man who dictates...
We might not have the time for you to go further. Mr. Adams Momoh, it's always wonderful to have these conversations with you, and you go in depth into matters of broadcasting and television.
I said how excited I was, and I'm sure I've been vindicated. You can see how we can stay here to whatever, to keep talking about television.
The beauty about it is, I mean, you set the rules, so we have to follow it. Thank you so much, Mr. Adams Momoh, for being part of the program. Our wonderful head of programs. You have all the adjectives.
Well, I don't need to describe him any further. He has already proven his mettle, and we can't thank you enough, sir, for being our guest on the program this morning. We couldn't have called anyone better. Thank you so much. We really appreciate that. But of course, before we take leave of this, for me, I just want to say that we as parents have to be very, very intentional on especially what we expose our children to.
Exactly.
We've already heard it, the influence of this very box, the influence of television on our lives as human beings is so great that it requires intentionality. You can't just leave it anyhow. You can't just expect someone else to take charge. You have to play that very important role as a parent, else someone else will do that for you through that TV, and the consequence will not be something that you will be welcoming.
Having said that, we'll move on now to the Investment Plus segment, as they're standing by to give us those very important financial management tips.